Hello YouTube Pipers, Double O Pipe here, aka Rick. Opening up my jar of Carter Hall to spill out on my tray. Look at the size of that. That's a tobacco piece. Oh, I love the smell of that. And my Clark's favorite, Savinelli, with the yard-long stem. I'm going to poke tobacco in this. Not necessarily that big wad or that big leaf. That should do it. That should do it. Put the remainder back in. This is my tobacco plate. It's a bill of sale from the people I bought tobacco from. Now, I might better look. Yeah, I might. I bet I don't have another filter. Nope, but I'm taking this one out because it looks mighty ugly. And I'll just smoke it without a filter by Yingo. I was asked about my lighter, and this lighter I got from one of the online stores. And it has the label of Captain Black on it, dark blue body, filled with butane. I can't believe I didn't put some filters up here. I thought that I had some, but no. Well, hello folks. I hope everybody's doing well. I have a birthday coming up next month. And it was usually this time of the year that my mother would ask me, when I was a boy, even when I wasn't a boy. The last year she was with us, she asked me once again, "What kind of cake would you like this year, son?" And this particular year, I said to her, "I want a store-bought cake." And being the selfish little kid that I was, I didn't see the disappointment in her face. And she said, "A store-bought cake? Why would you want a store-bought cake?" "Because I've seen them advertised and they look good. That's what I want. I want a store-bought cake." And she said, "You sure you don't want me to bake a cake for you? I do it every year." And I said, "No, ma'am, I don't want your cake this year. I want a store-bought cake." So after I said that, I turned around and started walking out, and my dad looked at my mother, and he said, well, get him a store-bought cake. She says, but I always enjoy cooking his cake or baking his cakes. And he said, well, you don't have to do it this year. She said, I love baking cakes for him and for his cousins. And Dad said, well, you see he has his mind made up. He wants a store-bought cake, so you just have to put love into that store-bought cake for him. And she picked up some pans. She said, I got these pans, heart-shaped pans, especially for his birthday this year. I thought he'd like that. And Dad said, well, you can always, excuse me, you can always bake a heart-shaped cake next year. Let him have what he wants. It's his birthday. So Mom, disappointed, put the pans up. Now all this, I never heard all this. This was said between them, and I was told this later. Because I had run out the door slammed behind me, as it always did. Excuse me. Look at that, I do have a... And I ran across the yard into the next yard in my cousin's house. Running in the house, I slammed that door too. My aunt said to me, Ricky, don't you ever go anywhere without slamming the door behind you. And I said, I guess I don't. And she said, oh. She didn't like me slamming the door either, but that's kind of a Southern boy's rite of passage, slamming screen doors when they come inside. At least when they're little like I was. Anyway, she said, just no teaching you anything, I guess, about that. I said, I guess not. She said, go on, go to the table and I'll get you some breakfast. And I said, yes, ma'am. And I ran over and there was a table with two bench chairs. My cousins, Richie and Linda, were sitting on this side toward the door. My cousin Hayne and his special table was sitting in front of the table, and I went around the side to the other bench chair and slid in. My cousins, Richie and Linda, looked at me and said, your birthday's coming up, huh? I said, yeah, it is. Richie said, well, what kind of cake you gonna get? You gonna have her make you a Lady Baltimore? That's my favorite kind, she said. Your mama makes the best Lady Baltimore cake in the world. And I said, uh-uh. And Linda looked at me and said, you gonna get a devil's food cake then? You like devil's food, I know, and she makes a mighty good devil's food cake. I looked at her, I said, uh-uh. My aunt slipped a plate in front of me, bacon and eggs, and I started stuffing my face. Both girls looked at each other, puzzled, looked at me like, whoa, what are you getting? And my cousin Hayne said, an angel food cake. She's going to make you an angel food cake. I love her angel food cake. I said, uh-uh. That ain't what I'm getting. And my aunt came in and said, if she's not baking you one of those three, what's she baking you? And I looked at her and I said, she ain't baking me nothing. I'm getting me a store-bought cake. And in unison, all of them said, a store-bought cake? I said, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want, and that's what I'm getting. And they all said, you're not going to like it. I said, sure I am. They all said, no, you're not going to like it. I said, I've seen that thing on TV, The Lone Ranger, and they show that coconut cake with the white icing. Man, that thing looks so good. That's exactly what I want. And they looked at each other and they said, we aren't going to like it. So anyway, I ate breakfast and Haynes said, let's play some Monopoly. And we all went, oh, because he always won. He always won at Monopoly. And it wasn't because we let him. It's because he was just good at it. The rest of us weren't that good at it. After we'd finished and he won everything, all the money, I got up and said, well, I guess I'm going to go home. And I started to go out, and Hayne yelled back, don't forget we're going to watch the horror shows tonight. I think it's Frankenstein. And I said, yeah, I'll be back. I'll bring the popcorn. And they said, good. So I ran across the yard up to the front of the house, and my mother was standing there, opened up the screen door. I said, what you doing? She said, well, I thought I would save your dad the slamming of the screen door by letting you in. Plus, I want to know what kind of store-bought cake you talking about. So I explained to her about the Lone Ranger and Merita bread that was the sponsor of the Lone Ranger, and how they always showed this white icinged coconut cake that always looked so luscious. And every time I saw it, I just drooled, and that's what I wanted. She said, you sure you don't want me to make you a cake? I said, no ma'am, not this year. I want that store-bought cake. So, even though I didn't notice it because I was a kid and I was too intent on my own stuff, that look of disappointment returned to her face again. But she said, okay, we'll look into that. And then I asked her, we got any Jiffy Pop? She said, yeah, I think we got one in here. I said, I need it to take back over because we're going to watch the horror movie tonight. It's Friday. And she said, okay, yeah, I'm sure I got some. She found it and handed it to me. And I put it aside until I ran over there next time. Well, the next few days, the next couple of weeks, nobody mentioned cake to me again, but they all looked at me like, when they thought about me eating my store-bought cake and them having to eat a store-bought cake instead of the cakes they always looked forward to whenever my mom was cooking me a cake or baking me a cake. And the day finally came. And I ran over and I said, come on over to the house. We're gonna have a birthday. And they all said, okay. Richie and Linda walked on out, heading to the house, and I was pushing Ronnie in his chair. Not Ronnie, Hayne in his chair. And Mom held the door while we lifted the chair up onto the porch and into the house. And I pushed it up to the table, and the table, the whole room had a golden glow from the candles that were on the cake. And I looked at the cake as I was rolling him in, and that white cake with the coconut on it had kind of a golden tinge to it, and it looked really good in that candlelight. But I was going to find out that was fool's gold. And I walked around to my side of the table and leaned in on the cake, and everybody said, blow the candles out. So I blew them all out. And everybody yelled, turn on the lights. And the lights came on, and under that bright light, that coconut cake just didn't look like anything that I saw on TV. Now, When my mother made a cake, it fit in the plate, and that icing went from all the way around at the very edge. But this cake kind of sat in the middle of the plate, and you could see bits of cake through the icing. That meant there wasn't much icing on there, and the flakes that were supposed to be sprinkled on were kind of matted here and there. It just was an unappealing look to it. My mother went and got plates and came in and cut wedges of cake, put them in front of everybody, and put a big glass of milk in front of me because she knew. So anyway, everybody sang happy birthday and said, let's dig in. And I dug into my cake and I lifted it up and put it in my mouth, and it sucked all the moisture out of my mouth. I chewed it up and had a hard time swallowing it. I was majorly disappointed. And I grabbed that glass of milk and drank half of it just to get that dryness out of my mouth because the cake was so dry. It just sucked all the moisture out of my mouth. Ah. Well, I said to my mother, I said, I'm sure sorry. I thought that was going to be so much better because it looked so good on the TV. And my dad looked at me and said, oh, yeah? I looked at him, and he had this smile on his face. He knew I was going to be disappointed. I said, well, Mama, I'm sorry I asked for this now. I wish that you had baked me a cake. But she wasn't there. She had left the room. And somebody turned the lights out, and she came around the corner with a cake in her hand on a plate with the candles on top burning, and put it, Dad removed that one and put this cake down in front of me, and she said, here's your birthday cake, Ricky. I looked at her, and tears came to my eyes. She said, blow out your candles, son. This cake was in the shape of a heart, and I exclaimed, it's in the shape of a heart. And tears just started trickling down my face. She said, well, blow out your candles. So I blew them out, and they turned the lights on, and that icing was on there was so thick, and the sprinkling of coconut was just right. And my mother cut slices, and it was a Lady Baltimore cake. Richie loved Lady Baltimore cake. And I opened up my presents. And I looked at my mother, and she just smiled at me, and I knew that when she baked this cake, that with every cake she ever baked, one of the major ingredients she put into them was the love she felt for whoever she was baking a cake for. And just thinking about this today brought tears to my eyes because I miss her. I miss her very much. She was the most loving person I know and have ever known. And everybody felt the same way about her. And my cousin Richie, who loved her Lady Baltimore cake, just passed away last week. She's probably the cousin that I spent more time with not in person, but on the phone, just talking. And she's going to be missed. She was a sweet lady. Tomorrow I go to her funeral, and she will be missed. But my mother, she knew that I was going to hate that cake, and I did. It was awful. And she had baked one for me anyway, and she made it with white icing and coconut sprinkled on the top, and inside was the Lady Baltimore with pecans, and I can't remember what else is in it, but such a good cake. And it was one that, like I say, Richie loved. So if you have a mother still alive and your mother enjoys cooking a cake or baking a cake for you, don't get a store-bought cake. Let her bake you a cake. Don't be so selfish and involved that you don't think about what she enjoys too. As I say, my birthday's coming up next month. You can send the presents anytime. And I'll let that be the end of it, because I've been here yakking and nearly crying and enjoying my pipe. I hope y'all lit a pipe, smoked along with me, and chuckled with me about this long-held memory of a mother who was wonderful, and cousins that I miss. And I'll say right now, I hope everybody's doing fine. I wish you all a good week ahead, and I'll say God bless and bye-bye.